Okay, we're live. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be joined by Mel Pennant today. Big fan of Miss Hortense. And you're going to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your book.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kaz. So I'm Mel Pennant. I'm the author of a new debut called A Murder for Miss Hortense, which is the first in my crime series. It stars Miss Hortense, who is this wonderful, formidable character. She's a retired Caribbean nurse from the Windrush generation. She is very astute. She can tell when a beef patty is made and it doesn't have any turmeric in it. She's not scared of anybody, literally anybody. So the local drug dealer, priest, or powerful business people. And she's got a skill. She can decipher your secrets from just the tiniest physical clue. She used those skills about 30 years ago to investigate the investments of what are called the Partner Network. The Partner Network are a group of Black investors that are determined to help their community grow. But in her current day, which is in around the year 2000, a man turns up in a locked house at the bottom of some stairs with a Bible quote next to him. And that literally launches Miss Hortense back into her past. She discovers that she's going to have to solve not only this current day crime, but crimes of the past 30 years ago that she's really tried her best to forget. And she's going to need to do that. She's going to need all the mysterious skills of her, all the mysterious contents of her handbag to help her, to force the community to admit that there is a killer amongst them. And we're joined by my dog Blue as well, who's on my lap.
There are so many things you just said in that introduction that I'm just smiling about as I remember, like reading the book. Like I love the bits about her handbag because she has a day and a night handbag, doesn't she?
Absolutely.
She identifies with a bit of ribbon on one of them. And they don't have the sort of average everyday contents that you would expect in.
Oh, no. She's got lots of really interesting contents in her handbag. She's a retired Caribbean nurse, so, she's not afraid to carry medical paraphernalia. But I guess she also, in her bag, she will find sort of disguises and things that she can sort of put on to kind of make people assume that she is one thing when she's not really, if it means that she can get into places that others can't.
Which she is quite good at doing. And like you said, she's not scared of anyone, is she? She'll just walk into anywhere and make herself known. And I think that's sort of that joy of being a bit older, maybe, with her. Like she's a bit like, I've kind of done my time.
Exactly.
What happens.
Yeah, I mean, she's an elder in her community, and in the Afro-Caribbean community, actually, elders are really, really respected. But she has a confidence with her. I mean, she's been a nurse for 30 years, so she's had to navigate some pretty tricky situations, as you can imagine. She will have emigrated from Jamaica to the fictional suburb of Biggleswade in Birmingham in the 1960s. You can imagine that she would have faced quite a number of quite a lot of hostility during that time, which she's had to navigate. So, she's worldwide. She knows the world. She's been there. She's done that. And she's got a real drive to find the truth, and she'll do literally anything to get that. And yeah, she's not afraid of people getting in her way to achieve that goal.
Why a fictional district of Birmingham in particular? Because I feel like a lot of the rest of your book is based on actual real things.
Yeah, it's such a good question, and not really a question I've been asked before. I've been asked why Birmingham, and I have an answer for that. In terms of it being fictional, I guess I just didn't want to be distracted by having to confine Miss Hortense into a real place and therefore real roads, real streets, real monuments in a particular place that might just restrict her ability. She's someone that goes everywhere, and I didn't want to have to confine her to a real place, if you like, to do that. So it is based in Birmingham. The reason it's based in Birmingham, I don't have a personal connection as such. I've never lived there before. But I felt it was really important not to base it in London, which is where I'm from. I think particularly, as I've sort of been speaking about the book, I think it's really important to acknowledge that Black communities settled and do settle all over the UK. And there have been some Black communities that have settled in, lots of different parts of the UK, Bradford, Nottingham, Manchester, and, Cardiff, really deeply entrenched Black communities that there's a really wonderful book by an author called Lanry Bakary, which is called We Were There, that talks about this rich tapestry of the Black community and the historical roots that they have in these places and the communities, such important communities that they established and, have gone on to achieve brilliant and important things. And I just wanted to, I hope that this book not being based in London just acknowledges that. And I wanted also the setting to be a bit more intimate than London. Plus my grandparents, who are a huge influence for this book. My grandmother, my paternal grandmother, her best friend lived in Erdington in Birmingham. We used to go there for our holidays. And so there's a really lovely memory of us going in my grandfather's car. And it felt like a holiday because it was for my grandmother, who was reconnecting with, her childhood friend. So, yeah, for all those reasons, it's based in Birmingham. And then fictionally, as I say, just to give me a bit of license to kind of really be free with Miss Hortense and her community.
We've got a hello from the lovely William Shaw.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if you've read any of his books, but he's very good.
I haven't, I don't think, but yeah, I'll definitely have a look out.
He's very good at building that sense of place. I think very much like you have done, actually. Although it's fictional, yours, that you feel like it's a very real community. And I think that's because of all the other characters that are kind of involved around Miss Hortense. So you've not just got, like, Miss Hortense is a force to be reckoned with on her own, isn't she? But, like, everybody else that you meet in that community stands out as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope I've drawn really kind of three-dimensional characters. And actually, that was one of my struggles to, one of the comments of the book is that there are a lot of characters, and there are a lot of characters. But there were more before the editing process. And I think one of my weaknesses, I suppose, is that I really enjoy characters, and I enjoy the three-dimensionalness of them, if that is a word, and just exploring the different facets and traits of them. But yeah, the community around Miss Hortense is really important. And I think that is at the heart of the book, because the book is about the partner network, which the partner, for those who may not know, is basically like a mutual savings scheme. So you have like 10 people in a community. They each input, let's say, £10. They then have an accumulated pot of £100, and then they distribute that to each of the members, let's say once a week. So once a week, I'll get my £100. And if I'm the first person, I've got a loan of £90. If I'm the 10th person, I'm just getting my money back. But the partners were used by the Windrush community when they first came to this country, because often they didn't have access to traditional credit. Banks would not lend to them, or they were distrustful of banks. And so these were really powerful mutual saving schemes that were set up to solve a problem as a community. It was because of the collective nature of these schemes that's where they derived their power from. And they did lots of brilliant things with that accumulated wealth. They brought their houses, paid deposits down, paid for people to, family to come over, built businesses and families and homes back home. And literally, my grandmother was a partner lady. So I sort of stand on the shoulders of that legacy, and many actually of sort of third, fourth generation, which is what I am, have benefited from the partner. So it's a real thing, a really important thing, but the community is at the heart of it.
That's kind of one of Miss Hortense's sort of sidelines, isn't it? Because when we meet her, she's sort of fallen out with her partner network, hasn't she, for various reasons. But she sort of still investigates things that they might want to invest in, to see if they're worth being. I mean, that's not like sort of giving away anything about the plot, but it's like quite a nice little sideline that she does.
Exactly. Exactly, yeah. And I think although she stepped away from it, or rather, I don't want to give anything away either, but the fact that she's out of it doesn't mean that her heart isn't in it, if you get what I mean. I think she sees it as a really important aspect of the community, and therefore, she continues to investigate those investments, make sure that there aren't any bad apples in the cart, and that it was set up, or is continuing to do what it was set up to do, which was to support the community. So it's actually really important to her. Yeah.
And that they don't invest in people who don't put turmeric in the
Exactly.
which again was quite. I think that there's quite for it for the when I started reading it, the book went quite dark in places,
Mm.
and I didn't expect it to, because it sort of starts off like you're reading a cozy crime mystery, but I think there's so much humour throughout that you don't notice.
Yes.
But there's
Yeah.
actually some quite kind of dark moments.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, I think it doesn't hide at those darker aspects to this community, and they're there. But the community is very much, as I say, it's very much influenced by my own grandparents. Although I didn't really realise that until I'd sort of written it, and then realised how influential how much of their influence is in the book. But my experience of them is that they were the people who would just get on with anything. They weren't sitting in a corner licking wounds or being victims. They were very kind of resolute. We're getting on, we're doing this. It's full steam ahead. And I hope that I've managed to kind of capture that spirit within the book. So you do see these other dark areas, but they're not defining this community. They are not what it is. The book doesn't shy away from it, but there's a real drive to kind of, as I say, get to the truth. That's the most important thing. And, that's what Miss Hortense and the Partner Network do.
There's also like a joy found in food throughout the book, isn't there? Like you put recipes throughout and things like that, which I think is another like nice little flavour.
Mm. Yeah, it is indeed a flavour. Again, just my own experience is that food has really brought it brings family, it brings people together. And both my grandmothers were very big cooks, and when they were cooking Sunday dinners, the whole family would come around. The tastes of the Caribbean are so evocative for me, like even just speaking about it, the Scotch bonnet pepper, the scallion, which is sort of spring onion, just the different spices, pimento, that are put in Caribbean food and flavors are just so evocative for me. And I just wanted to include that in the book and share it with others. And also I think her recipe making is an opportunity for her to kind of mull over her cases, and we see her doing that. So it's a bit of a pause. And, there's a saying in the book, which is big fire doesn't cook food, i.e., turning the heat up, under your pot will not cook the food, it will burn it. And I sort of put that in the book, but it's also sort of a metaphor for, she has to take her time often to just be thinking about, what it is she's experienced, so that she can try and work out her clues and where to go to. And we see her doing that when she's making her recipes.
Yeah, there's a lovely moment kind of later in the book, isn't there, where she's like making a batch or something. She's like, this is going to take at least another batch.
Yes, exactly.
Kind of like thinking process, which I thought was really nice. William wants to know how different script writing is from writing a novel.
Yeah, so mainly I have been in the playwriting space, and I think they are very different actually. And I sort of have real life experience of that because I'm writing a play at the moment, and have found it actually really difficult to be in both spaces at the same time. I think the art, the art of writing plays and script writing are that you have to be very lean with it. Every word has to be earn its keep. I feel like you have to know why you're writing that thing, or it can take you a very long time to write the play or the script. Whereas with a book, I feel like you can feel your way into it. So my process for writing A Murder for Miss Hortense was literally that I'd get up very early every morning and I would just write, and I wouldn't censor myself. I wouldn't stop myself from just writing what was in my gut, and that's how I was able to achieve my book. I feel like writing a play is a very different process. You know, with a book, you can then go back and edit, and that's fine. But actually, it's really important to get those words on the page first. With a play, I just feel like the process is completely different. And because every word needs to be earned, there's quite a lot of thinking before you even put anything down, because otherwise you just have a lot of wasted work. There are a lot more differences. I mean, obviously, you know, the obvious ones are plays and screenplays are very visual. I'm quite a visual writer, so actually I saw the characters in A Murder for Miss Hortense and heard them before, you know, I wrote the words. I think I come from the same place in that respect. But then obviously in terms of point of view, in terms of stagecraft, in terms of how the reader or the audience receive the work, that's very different. And obviously with a book, there can be a lot of analysis by the reader and also creating images in their own head. Whereas with screenwriting and playwriting, you are presenting those images to people or to your audience, and you have a short period of time to hold their attention. And then it's, I guess, when they leave that auditorium or, you know, finish watching, that they're able to then absorb and analyse. Hope that's answered a bit of William's question.
Well, he's got a follow-up. He says, do you miss the feedback of a live audience?
Such good questions. I don't miss it. I think it's just different. So with books, obviously, you get reviews and they're not live. And maybe actually that's why I, you know, like a lot of writers were saying and other friends and stuff were saying, don't read the reviews. But I was actually seeking them out. So actually, maybe in answering this question, I'm understanding why I was doing that, maybe because I was looking for a bit of an audience, because I was seeking them out, and I kind of do still. I do it less now, but I was really quite eager to see what the reception was. It's really interesting when I'm watching a play, for example, with a live audience, because, you know, they are almost part of the play, you know, how they receive it, you know, are they getting the laughs? I'm almost always two steps in front of them as well. Sometimes it's not, it's wonderful, but also the joy can sometimes not be there because I'm like two steps ahead and I'm like, I want them to laugh here. Will they laugh here? And, you know, you're sort of monitoring that. I'm still doing playwriting. As I say, I'm still writing now. So I don't feel like I've got to like give up that to do novel writing. I just think they're very different writing experiences, and you kind of, I have to I wasn't prepared for that, but I'm sort of working my way into that now. But it's a really good question. I feel like I have to go away and think about that a bit more.
Would you want to write the screenplay for Miss Hortense if it got made into a?
Yeah,
it would make a really good show.
yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, my dog's deciding she doesn't quite know what she's doing, but I completely agree with you. As I say, for me, it was a very visual idea, so I can really see it visually, and a lot of people have said that to me as well. Again, I'm thinking about other writers' experiences. So I know some writers say they really dislike the experience of adapting their book because, you know, it's like holding on to all to your darlings, and it's a very different experience. You know, you are having to make different choices. The kind, you know, the medium itself requires you to convey your story in a very different way. And I don't know, because I am so entrenched in my book and the story that I've told here, whether I would be dispassionate enough to step back and do what needed to be done to make it a really good screenplay. On the other hand, I'd love to try. So, you know, but I know that it has been quite difficult for some writers who've tried to do that.
Can we talk about Miss Hortense's sidekicks for a bit? Because I absolutely love her sidekicks in this book. From the like snacks they take with them to go on investigations to, like, they're brilliant, aren't they? Do you want to tell a group a bit about them if they've not read it already?
Of course. So I guess the first person I should introduce is Blossom, who is Miss Hortense's Watson, her foil. Blossom is a really lovely character, and actually, when I speak to people about the book, Blossom is the character that most people will say, "I love Blossom. I'm Team Blossom." I think she's so lovable because she is a character who is really not scared to put her foot in it. She, literally says whatever she wants, and she's not scared if the words aren't quite right or she's mispronounced them. She will go off on tangents and go and do her own investigating. She Miss Hortense has a real soft spot for her, and she for Miss Hortense. They're very loyal to one another. And actually, Blossom was sort of the first character that I was able to write. So I had this idea, it was very visual. I knew that Miss Hortense would have to be this really strong force of nature. But because of that, I was a little bit scared of writing her. I didn't really know how to enter her. And actually, it was with Blossom that I was just able to really just, let loose and just write anything, because that is the sort of character she is. And then by doing that, I was able to kind of find where Miss Hortense's soft spots are, I say, and where her hard spots are. So she's a real joy of a character to write. She's just, this very bright, vibrant character who, as I say, many people love. I'll introduce Fitz next. So he is this really cool ex-boxer, actually, who is kind of always fitted out in kind of trilby, silk tie, zoot suit. And again, he is a really important person for Miss Hortense. And he is very protective of her. And he's also had this kind of underworld connection. So he's able to bring that to the table as well in terms of their investigating. We've then got the Pastor Williams, who is a preacher. He's got the sweetest singing voice you can ever imagine. And he really loves his congregation, but I say he loves them sometimes a little bit too much. And you'll kind of, if you read the book, you'll understand what I mean when I say that. But he's this really interesting character who likes to give sermons, and he's he very much adds, I think, to the whole dimensions of the characters. And and then we've got Gregory. I shouldn't miss out Gregory, who is Miss Hortense's nephew. He's in his 30s. He is a police officer, and Miss Hortense adores him and her. But also Miss Hortense, because of the nature of her, she's always trying to ask Gregory for information, and that can often get him into trouble. But he's always there sort of on a Tuesday to eat his food. And, that's when often Miss Hortense will kind of really kind of probe him in ways that he would prefer not to be probed. Yeah.
One of my other favourite moments is Gregory going to visit the community centre, and he sort of gives himself a time on his watch before everyone knows like what's going on, doesn't he? And then he gets outside and things haven't gone well.
No, that's right. Yeah. And I think he has learnt from Miss Hortense. So he does, you see him, I think, just in certain snippets of the book, utilizing some of the tools that Miss Hortense will utilize. But I mean, I find him an interesting character, because this is kind of, policing is a second career for him, and he has gone into policing because he wants to make a difference. But a lot of the community are distrustful of the police, so he has to navigate that. And Miss Hortense really didn't want him to go into the police force either. Although she herself has connections with the police force, she sees the dangers there for him. So I think it's a really interesting dynamic. And I think he understands the power of the partner and the areas that they can get into in the community that maybe the police just can't.
And maybe sort of the moments where the police need to work with the community as well, because he's like stronger when he's with the community.
Yeah. And I think he understands the history of the partner and of the community as well, and how important that community is. So we will see, we'll see his character come back in later books, and, exploring those dynamics and some of those tensions.
What's the feedback been like from people who maybe haven't come across things like a partner before, or been as involved in like that kind of community before? Because you use quite a lot of like, I don't know what to say, like a dialect and things through, which I think adds realism. But
yeah, so in terms of the partner itself, I think a number of people haven't been aware of it. And actually, it's interesting because I think it's so common in the Afro-Caribbean community, and actually in many communities, actually, it's just called many different things. But because it's so common, I think the community hasn't really given it the space and the spotlight that actually I think it deserves. So, a number of people said they had no idea that this kind of system operated in the community, or why it operated. The idea that, certain parts of the community would not have access to banks, seems really strange to some people. So, but, I think people have been like, oh, I went and looked this up, and actually it's a real thing. And, for example, the Bank of England, I'm not sure if the exhibition is still on, but they did a really lovely little exhibition, again, just highlighting the importance of the partner. In terms of other aspects of the book, like the dialect, just in terms of reviews I've read, some people I think have said it's taken a bit of adjusting. Some people have said it's really helped them to kind of get a feel of the community. I think for me, it's absolutely integral to the book. And I never sat down and thought, oh, I'm going to write a book that has this dialect in it. It just comes very natural, or it came very natural in this story, that is the way that this story had to be told. And I don't, from my perspective, but I would say that, but I don't think it's difficult to understand. I think once you just start to get into the rhythm of it, you'll begin to sort of understand what is being said, I think. And that's what I've heard. If people have initially been unfamiliar with it, they've been like, you just need to read it. Some people say actually the audiobook is really good in this space as well, for giving the different accents, because we have people from different Caribbean communities within the book, and actually the audio actress does a fantastic job of bringing that alive. But I think it is accessible to everybody. I think for those who don't understand this world, I hope it's a real door to opening it and understanding it. And I've had people sort of say, oh, I worked with Caribbean nurses in the 60s and the 70s. I know Hortense. I've, experienced this community, but I've never experienced it in this way. And so it's lovely, again, to be able to open the door and shine a light on this community.
Well, I think that's what fiction does so well, isn't it? It shows you different people and different types of people and things that you might not have come across before, but it lets you explore all different kinds of worlds.
Absolutely.
And we need more people like Miss Hortense in the world.
Yeah,
I think.
I completely agree.
Is there going to be more books? Because you sort of leave it, without giving away a spoiler, you sort of leave it like she's about to start her second investigation.
Yeah, absolutely. And we pick up right there. So I'm actually in the throes of editing the second book now, really enjoying being back with the community, back with Miss Hortense and Blossom and Fitz and everybody. And we get launched straight into their next investigation, which, I'm really excited for readers to read, because one of the bits of feedback is that people really want to see the next book. They want to know what's going to happen next. And I'm really excited to kind of, get back in it and get onto a new case. So
How many books do you envisage with her? Because I feel like you could write quite a few. I think she's got, and there's even like spin-offs, because you could write spin-off ones about Gregory and.
Absolutely. So what's interesting is when I pitched this idea to my agent, I put like 100 other ideas at the back. It wasn't quite 100, but I wanted to make it clear both to my agent and the editors and my publishers that I didn't want this to be a standalone book, and that there is so many more stories in this community. So yeah, literally, I think the world is Miss Hortense's oyster. Definitely for her and the community, there are, it's lots here, and I think again it's just illustrative of the vibrancy of this community, that it has that range, and I really hope that I can continue to sort of bring that to audiences.
You mentioned about the sort of book you read about the communities that were established all over. Would you be tempted to take Miss Hortense on a visit to any of those other ones?
Yeah, absolutely. And for my third book, because someone was saying to me, "Oh, will Miss Hortense be going to the Caribbean?" So I have sort of visions for my sort of third book that she'll be going on a trip, which I think is lovely to see her traveling. So yes, absolutely. I don't think she's necessarily confined to Biggleswade. And indeed, you see in the book that there are all these connections that she has. In the book, we see her utilizing resources that she has in Jamaica and in America, and it's very much the story of the Caribbean community actually in the UK, that there are all these links throughout the world. And so yes, Miss Hortense can and will travel.
Well, that's amazing. No, I kind of, I want to see her traveling outside of it, because I think she would be different, but not that different outside of her community. Because I think in the community, she's definitely like got this very strong standing, and people know who she is and don't want to mess with her. Whereas if she goes to somewhere else, she won't have that same.
That's very true. That's very true.
And
And we'll get.
she would change how she is.
It's really true. I think there is a core part of her which is that kind of needing to solve and to get justice. But you're right. I think that's an opportunity to show. I mean, the first book, I think you see her vulnerability. I think you see it right from the first page. This wound that she carries with her. But I think, through the series, I think you will see those elements of her vulnerability too. And there is a question in the book, which is kind of, where is home? It's a question that's repeated because obviously she emigrated here. She left her home. She left her parents. And that home in Jamaica is very different, and she's very proud of the home that she's established here. But that has been tested. As I say, there have been moments of hostility for her where she has been told she should go back home, and she queries, where is that home? So I think that's a real area to continue to test, going forwards.
That's quite poignant in some of the past stories as well, isn't it? There's someone who loses a partner and doesn't was wanting to go home and then doesn't really know what home is.
Yeah, exactly.
And things. And I think that's there's a lot of quite poignant stories even just in someone who doesn't really see it that much.
Yeah, no, that's right. And again, within the community, there are many stories of people who have spent their whole life saving up for their retirement to go back home, and then they go back and it's not quite the experience or the home that they thought it was going to be, for all sorts of reasons. So it is poignant and probably very topical at the moment, and filled with a sadness, and also a joy that you've come and wherever you are, you're able to settle and create communities and ties that are so important.
You got some lovely quotes for the book as well, including from Lenny Henry, of all people.
Yes, yeah, that was amazing. I got to meet him for the first time probably about a year and a half ago, and it's been amazing that he was willing to say that about the book. I was so shocked that he had read a proof of it. And pretty much how you are sitting here with me, he sat down and was able to tell me about my book and about the characters, and he really enjoyed Miss Hortense and Blossom, and I was just there with kind of my eyes like this, like, oh my goodness. But yeah, it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
So William's saying it sounds like you love digging into the bit of British history. Was there anything that surprised you about it?
I wrote a audio play called A Story Told Three Times and Still Unfinished, where I was able to speak with historians and do some research at the National Archives. It was a really interesting piece, which was celebrating Windrush 75. When I looked at the National Archives around this time, I think what surprised me was that the information that was in the National Archives, there wasn't a real clear call for the Caribbean communities to come to the UK, which was contrary to kind of what I thought I knew. But actually, the situation was a lot more complex. I'm not even fully sure that I understand it just, from the documents that I saw. But that was really surprising to me, I think. I think maybe we're all used to that pathos kind of video of the Caribbean men, mostly men, stepping off the Windrush ship in 1948. And, Lord Kitchener singing London is the place for me, and we're sort of familiar with that sort of short clip. But actually there is, it's really interesting just to kind of analyze a bit around the camera, and that's a bit what that piece is around. But that was quite interesting to me. And I think the other thing that was really interesting to me was also in doing some research for that play, which was really helpful also just for sort of informing the book, was doing some workshops with elders in the community. And actually that piece around, the Windrush generation, they left their homes and they came here. But one of the things I didn't really think about until that point was that they left their families, they left their parents, their grandparents to come and, start a better life in a new country. But I never really thought about the loss to those people who they left behind. And there's quite a lot of sadness in that space and quite a lot of trauma, actually, particularly for children who travelled and came over, often meeting family that they'd never known before and leaving a home that was their home. So it's quite, I think there's still a lot there that the community and others, need to sort of think about and do a bit more, do a lot more work on. But yeah, it just made me see that and my grandparents from a different kind of angle.
Is there sort of an aspect of it? Obviously, if partners maybe gonna we don't want to give anything away, sorry. Is there anything apart from the partner network that you've sort of learned on that research that you would put into future books or would want to explore in future books?
I think the partner is a core part of the book, and that will just continue. As I say, my grandmother was a partner lady, and actually it's still active today. I was talking to my stepmother, who was a member of about 4 different partners at the same time, and was able to do all sorts of things with her involvement in those partners. So I think, as I say, the partner for me is about community and it's about solving a problem, and that's what the genesis of this series is about. It's about community and it's about solving a problem, which is that they are the only ones really that will be able to get them justice or solve a crime in various spaces. So it will be core and feature. I say that now, having just written the second, but it will continue to be core to all of the books, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it could not be. But I'm just wondering if there were other sort of things you would want to include that you haven't included already.
As I said, there are many other characters that I can see around the partner that I actually had to cull from the first book. So, I hope that they will be able to come in. you know, the nature of the partner is such that it's about, you know, this cumulative wealth, and then individuals using that to kind of create their own stories, if you like, and you know, do things with that. So I think that that will be something that I will take forward, you know, probably in future books. But the partner as a kind of, you know, a mutual saving scheme, as I say, it's really quite common in the community. So I feel like there are so many individual stories within the partner in terms of what it's been able to achieve and how individuals have been able to use it. I think it's infinite. But in terms of what the partner is itself, I think, you know, as I say, you know, it's called many different things. So it's called susu or box hand in different Caribbean communities. Actually, I was speaking to someone who's from Nigeria, and they said they have something called susu, which is similar. So, you know, I think me doing this, I'm just kind of discovering new things about the partner and what it has been in different communities, and you know, I'm sure that will feed in future stories.
I mean, you were saying about culling characters, but I kind of feel like it's a novel that needs a lot of characters, and you don't get confused with them because they all have, you know, their own unique ways of expressing themselves, their own very vivid characters. But I don't. I'm kind of sad that some more were culled that I didn't get to meet.
Yeah, you will. I hope you will get to meet them in the future. Yeah, I agree with you. You know, this is a book about community, and so you do see a number of characters. But as you say, I hope that they are distinguished enough for you to be able to, as a reader, get a sense of each of them. And I think because the book sort of has a dual timeline, so it's set in the 1960s, then set in the 2000s, actually it's quite important to introduce you to those different characters and to what has happened in the past, because it does inform the future. So so yeah, I think all of them, you know, are integral to the book. And I'm really pleased to hear you say that.
Was it quite tricky to write the sort of two timelines because they work really well? I would imagine having to get all the facts of the 60s right, for instance, might be quite tricky.
Yeah, it was. So yeah, as I say, my process is that I just tend to write and then I have to go back and edit. So at that point, I had to sort of do like a spreadsheet. Miss Hortense was born here. She came to England here. This happened here, and sort of track my way through so that it all made sense. But actually, the importance of having an editor and copywriters and line editors cannot be overplayed, because I had a brilliant copywriter who did this kind of amazing timeline where it was like day one, 1 o'clock, this happens, day two, and he sort of did this thing. And then I'd realized that someone who was dead in like 1962 came back in 1999.
Oh,
So he
nice.
discovered this plot hole, basically, which, you know, I'd read the book 1,000 times and just hadn't seen. So yeah, so actually, you know, there was it's quite intricate, and you know, it's really important to make it seamless to kind of do that. But copy editors are amazing for picking up the things that I missed. So yeah.
So I know you've done a lot of writing before with your playwriting and things. Is it very different launching this novel to how it's been before? Because I would imagine book tours and things and book events are a little bit different.
It's very different, actually. I mean, the thing that is very similar is that there's a lot of collaboration and there's a lot of people involved. So I just mentioned, you know, editors, copy editors, line editors, and there's marketing and publicists, all, you know, brilliant team that have come together and really helped to kind of showcase Miss Hortense. So it's been a really positive, collaborative experience. But yeah, the process is quite different. I mean, even just the length of time that it takes for a book to publish. So I got my book deal in May 2023 and it was published in June 2025. So, you know, that's almost 2 years. Plays, you know, I've had a similar experience, I suppose, where I was developing a play for 4 years, and then actually it was meant to be put on during lockdown and didn't get put on because it was locked down. So plays can take a long time to kind of develop and get to the stage. But I think that's unusual. Whereas, I think 2 years is not uncommon in the publishing industry. And then you're doing things like, dropping off proofs to bookshops, and then doing book events and these sorts of events. I didn't really know what I would be like in these kind of spaces, because I think being a writer, when it's just you and your computer and you and your story and all your stories in your head, is quite a different space to then talking very publicly about the book. And I was just really wanting to watch how I was in these spaces, but actually I really enjoy it. I really enjoy speaking to readers. I really enjoy that people have read the book, and I am getting things that, I'm like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. I'm going to make a note of that. Which it really excites me, that actually the process of moving from a writer to an author has again been really positive. And I'm quite introverted and quite shy otherwise, so I really had no idea what I'd be like. Actually, I'm loving it.
Well, I discovered your book at Truman Books in Farsley. So you did well getting your book out there, to reach the independent bookshops.
Yeah.
And that's what made me want to get you on in the group, because I was like, this sounds so good.
Thank you. Truman Books is brilliant. I loved going along. I loved speaking to the audience. And independent bookshops. That's been one of my favourite things. I did a bit of a book tour to Truman Books and a few other bookshops across the UK, independent bookshops. And it's just, I love those spaces. I think you get a sense of the real passion and commitment and investment that independent bookshop put into those spaces for readers, for their community, and for authors. And I went to the Brighton Book Festival about a month ago, and I loved it. It was a joy to go, again with the Frory Bookshops independent bookshop.
And you've got, you were saying before we went live, you've got Bloody Scotland coming up. Are you on a panel there?
I am really, really looking forward to it. I've never been to Bloody Scotland before. I've never been to Stirling before, which is where it is. So I'm really excited, and that's in September, so it's coming up really soon. Loving all these spaces.
I have never been to Bloody Scotland, but we interview the people on the debut list, and sometimes the McIlvenny one every year.
Right, okay.
We'll have for the last few years. And they're always really worth looking out for the books on those.
Yeah, the festivals I think are great. So I went to Capital Crime this year. We spoke about Harrogate as well. I really enjoy the festivals. Again, as a sort of very introverted person, I didn't know whether I'd be like, oh, I don't know, whether this space is for me. But everyone is so friendly, and people have, my editor said the crime writing community is really welcoming, and that has definitely been my experience. Apparently the romance community is not as welcoming. That's what I've been told, but crime is very nice. And when I went to Harrogate last year, I was just a member of the audience. I was going to kind of see what it was all about, and there were some people there that put me under their wing, and I sort of hung around with them. And I think they're really, really very vibrant places. So yeah.
Was your book about Miss Hortense always going to be a crime novel?
Yes, actually, it's a good question. I think, as we were talking before, I think crime is such a broad genre. You can have lots of different genres of crime, but even within those genres, even within cozy crime, I think there's a huge spectrum of cozy crimes. And like you said with mine, it's cozy, but there are dark bits to it as well. There's social commentary as well, and it's quite light and humorous. So, I wanted a genre that I could use that would enable me really to showcase this community, and I felt like a crime novel would enable me to do that. The idea of having quite a satisfying ending, that could look at, you know, something that has gone wrong, and then the opportunity for Miss Hortense to kind of, and the partner network to solve that. You know, for there, as I said, to be the dark and the light, all of that really I think is perfect for the sort of community and the book that I wanted to write. So it was always going to be crime. I like reading crime books, and as I say, I like the versatility of the genre. So yes is the answer.
I don't know if she is cozy crime. I think that's what you think it is when you start reading. Because obviously it's like an older lady. You think it's going to go a certain way. But then I was like, I picked it up and started reading, and I was like, oh, I know how this goes. I know how this older lady investigating a crime is going to go in this kind of book. And then it did not go anywhere that I expected it to go.
Yeah, people have said that,
hang on, what is going on here? But I was like along for the ride at that point, and I was like, I'm loving it, but it's not what I expected.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not wedded to kind of labels, if you like. I think it, you know, as you say, probably it does, you sort of enter it thinking it will be cozy. And actually, I quite like that. I quite like if it sort of, you know, I don't ever want to mislead readers, but I do like if I'm able to surprise readers in a very good way. And so, you know, I quite like that you might think that it's one thing and then it might become something else. And actually, that's the nature of my writing. I really like, I call them, I say juxtapositions, but, you know, something that you just sort of turn around and go, oh, that's really interesting. Those are the moments that really sort of get me kind of like, oh, hairs on the back of my arm, you know, like I've got to keep reading or writing or whatever. And so if my book has a bit of that nature about it, then I'm really happy. I've just got family coming in now, so you may hear some background noise, but just as always.
What have you read recently and really enjoyed? I always like to ask this question.
Yeah, so I brought some of my books. So I read the books that were on my Harrogate panel, and I really enjoyed those. So A.A. Dan's The Chemist, I thought is really good. I don't want to give anything away about anybody's books, and I'm probably too bad at summarizing to do that. So I'm just going to say the title, but I really enjoyed that. And what I enjoyed actually was that A.A. Dand is a chemist. So I was really watching it from the perspective of Miss Hortense, who is a nurse, and sort of seeing how he was able to weave, I think, that his knowledge of that space into the book, which he does incredibly well. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I read Chris Chibnall's Death at the White Hart. I think that's the right title for it, which again is really enjoyable. And he is a screenwriter. And I think you really see that in the book. He wrote the Broadchurch series, and, you know, starts in this sort of a body found in quite an unusual way, and then we kind of explore how that body is found in you know, that unusual way, and that was really enjoyable. The Inheritance by Trisha. I'm sorry, I don't know her surname, but, you know, we sort of go to a remote island and then with a family, quite a rich family, and then sort of explore the family dynamics, and someone dies and we work out who does that, and that was really enjoyable. And Belinda Bauer's These Impossible Things, I think it's called, which has this just amazing premise about rare eggs and the lengths that people will go to get them. And it was really interesting listening to her on the panel, because she was saying that there is still a real issue around people trying to get these rare eggs. And she went to, I think, the Science Museum to have a look at their collection, but you have to be accompanied by like a security guard, and you have to, you know, there's all these rituals in terms of even being able to see these eggs, which no one else is allowed to see, which I just find fascinating. So those are some recent books. The Grapevine by Kate Kemp is a really brilliant book about community again, and her book was published in July. I'm reading another book by Joe Morey that was just published called, I've got it here, The Night Lagoon, which is a brilliantly descriptive book, actually. I am just reading Paula Sutton's new book, and that is called, sorry, let me just look at the title. I think it's called The Body in the Kitchen Garden. The Body in the Kitchen Garden. So yeah, just some. But I'm kind of reading lots of books on the go. I really enjoy reading books for inspiration. So yeah, that's just a flavour. I don't know if you've read any of those books, Kaz, or have any other recommendations.
I've read The Impossible Thing, actually, out of that list, I think.
Yeah.
That might be the only one.
Okay, great.
Your book is high on my list of recommendations. It's potentially on my favourite reads of the year.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much.
The other one that is going to be on there is from my Harrogate panel, which is Ademoye Banji's book called Esperance. But you have to be willing to embrace a bit of sci-fi to read it.
Okay.
It starts as like a locked room mystery with these people dead in a high-rise flat in Chicago, and they've been drowned in seawater, but there's no sea near Chicago, so you have to work out why that could have happened.
Ooh,
and there's a lot of links to the past. Like there's a Nigerian kind of connection, and there's links to the past, and then it's wonderful because it's not what you think it was going to be. Again,
I'm going to get that. Thank you so much for that recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm heartily in love with that as a book this year.
Brilliant. That sounds very intriguing. I'm going to get it.
William, who's been asking you your questions as well, his book, The Red Shore, is really good. In Devon.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I'm going on holiday next week, so I'm going to add both of those books to my holiday reading list. I've got a suitcase full of books that I'm taking with me, so we shall see. But that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, that's how I vibe when I go on holiday. Like less clothes, lots of books.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do it. Buy more books at the airport as well.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, I have such big ambitions. I'm only going away for 7 days, but so we shall see. But I'll definitely add those 2 books. So thank you very much.
No problem. And then we've only got a few minutes left. So remind people who are watching what they're going to go away and buy, because it is stunning. So please do.
Thank you. So A Murder for Miss Hortense. As Kaz and both of I have said, it features Miss Hortense, who is a retired Caribbean nurse and just this amazing character. I think if you read this book, I hope it will really set you up for the rest of the series and get you really invested in the community. And there is, so much more, to say and to see about this community. So I'm really excited for readers to read it. And I love these opportunities to then speak to readers as well. And, it forms part of my creative process too. So thank you so much for the opportunity, Kaz.
No problem. And I can't wait for when is book 2 likely to be out? How long do I have to wait?
So book 2 will be out June 2026. So it will come quickly.
Marvelous. That'll be I'll look forward to it. And hopefully you'll go on another book tour again, and you know where we are now.
Yeah, I'd love to. I'd really love that. Yeah.
And then thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's been brilliant being part of this conversation, and thank you everyone for listening in.